Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today, I want to talk about what is, in my opinion, the most underrated new unique item that was added to the game in the Delirium expansion, and that is the unique Cluster Jewel Megalomaniac. Now, the unique Cluster Jewel Voices is very popular, very powerful, and very expensive, but I wouldn't say it's underrated. In fact, a perfect Voices, a best roll one, can trade for as much as 3 to 4 Mirrors of Kalandra at the moment. One of the most expensive items the game has ever seen. However, Megalomaniac has flown under the radar. To give a quick idea as to what this jewel does, it is a medium cluster jewel, which means it can only go on the outside of the tree. There are 6 outer jewel sockets that accept cluster jewels, and it can either go in one of those directly, or you can use a large cluster jewel first, and that large cluster jewel will contain 0, 1, 2, or in the case of the Voices unique jewel, 3 medium cluster jewel slots. You can then socket a medium cluster jewel into those, or a small one for that matter, if you want to bypass Megalomaniac and use a normal cluster jewel instead. Now, when you do that, this will expand your passive tree. With a normal medium cluster jewel, the mods that have been rolled onto that cluster jewel will determine what form the expansion takes. With Megalomaniac, you get something a bit different. You get 4 sockets that are added. One of them is completely empty. So you'll see here that there's the way that it says, as 4 passive skills, added small passive skills grant nothing. They are a complete waste of a passive point. However, don't worry, it's cost worth paying. Then there will be 3 random notable mods. These can be, as far as I can tell, any combination of 3 of the passive mods that are only available through the use of cluster jewels. So, for instance, you might find that you get Adrenaline, Advanced Guard, and Aerialist. Any combination is possible, as far as I can tell. There may be some rules that I'm not aware of that prevent certain combinations from rolling, and this means that Megalomaniacs take 2 forms. The first one is the absolute dumpster tier ones, where you get 1 mod that boosts fire spells, 1 mod that boosts physical damage with bleeds, and 1 mod that boosts your minion damage. There is no synergy between these mods, and you end up with a complete waste of space. A Megalomaniac like that is worthless. However, what's more common is that you will get a Megalomaniac that has 3 mods that can conceivably all be used together, but probably not by the character that loots it. Megalomaniac only seems to drop in the Simulacrum, the new unique map that was added in the Delirium League. And it seems to drop late in the Simulacrum, possibly from bosses in it. So what is going to happen is that you're going to have a powerful character, possibly a quite meta build, that's going to be running through the Simulacrum, killing everything, and is going to sometimes loot one of these jewels. And most of them will not be able to use them, because these jewels are highly specialized. However, there will be a number of good combinations that are available. And this is where trade leagues come into play. If you're playing in a trade league, it's entirely possible that someone else has the perfect Megalomaniac for your build. They're not that rare. There's more than 100,000 of this jewel available for trade at the current state of the Delirium League, so 5 weeks in. And what you're going to want to do is search for them. And if you're bringing up, this is something that's PC exclusive, but on the Path of Exile website, there is the trade section. So to get there, you come to the main Path of Exile website, then just go to trade and search items. And once you're here, you'll be able to run a little search. So what I'm going to do is show you a couple of searches that I've done and some information on why I've done them. This here is a search specifically for Megalomaniac Jewels. You'll see here that I've got Megalomaniac Medium Cluster Jewel typed into this slot here. And then I've added in the stat filters. Must have Primordial Bond and must have Blessed. The way that I've chosen these two is, this was actually for one of my YouTube followers. I asked the question, what builds are you playing that are a little bit off the sort of main meta of the league? And this player was playing a physical golem build. And this golem build, as its key defensive layers, it was using life and the divine flesh notable, or keystone, sorry. The Divine Flesh Keystone, if you're not familiar with it, it basically kills off your ability to use Energy Shield defensively, You can still use it through Eldritch Battery to power your spells, but on its own it does nothing. However, it causes all damage you take to bypass Energy Shield, aka renders Energy Shield useless as a defensive layer. It gives you plus 10 to maximum Chaos Resistance, which is a really powerful defense in some situations, and it causes 50% of elemental damage that you take to be taken as Chaos damage instead. What this means in practice, if you're running a character whose resist profile is 75, 75, 75, 75, so you've actually maxed out your Chaos Resistance, and then you take this Divine Flesh, you're looking at having a Chaos Resistance maximum of 85. If you can fill that out, you're going to be taking 15% of the Chaos damage that you suffer from attacks. When an enemy hits you with a Fireball, let's not use Fireball, let's use something that's a hit, Arc. An enemy hits you with Arc, if it hits you for 1,000 damage, normally you would take 250 lightning damage. However, with Divine Flesh, instead, you will take 250 initial lightning damage, 125 will be damage you suffer as lightning, and the rest of it will be converted to Chaos, where instead of a 75 resist, you'll have an 85 resist. This means essentially you'll take 125 lightning damage and 75 Chaos damage, and that ends up being a total of 200 damage. You can see how that's a really powerful defensive layer. It requires a huge investment to make Divine Flesh work, but it is very powerful when you put in the effort. The only way that you can get this is by having a Glorious Vanity unique jewel, that's one of the Vaal ones, and it needs to be bathed in the blood of some number, sacrificed in the name of Zibakwa. I think that's how you pronounce it. Zibakwa, maybe. Sounds like a Chinese name, actually, so Zibakwa. Anyway, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. So you get one of these Zibakwa jewels, and you put it into your passive tree, and then every keystone node in that area will be transformed. It will lose its usual effect, and it will become Divine Flesh instead. At the same time, all of the other nodes in the passive tree will be converted into new nodes, and mostly with the Vaal ones this is detrimental, so you want to do this at a sort of end of your passive tree. Anyway, that's Divine Flesh for you. So this player was using Divine Flesh. So for that reason, I knew that defense had to be life-based, and also that this player would be valuing Chaos Resistance on any source of Chaos Resistance they could get. And so for that reason, I had to look through the various options that were available for large cluster jewels for effects that amplify minion damage. And Primordial Bond stuck out as something that was beneficial for a Golem player. So it gives Golem life, it gives increased damage to you per summon Golem, which is probably useless. Increased effective buffs granted by your Golems, which I believe is significant with Carrion Golem, although I could be wrong on that. So all around, I thought this was quite a good node for a character, although I've never played with it myself. You could also consider running Rotten Claws. Rotten Claws gives minions a chance to impale on hit with attacks. Because it's only 20%, I didn't feel like it was enough of a multiplier to go with it. Then I had a look at the various life nodes, the defensive nodes that were available from a life perspective. And Blessed is an all-around exceptionally good one. So let's just bring up Blessed to give a sense as to what that node actually does. So the notable Blessed here gives 13% Chaos Resistance, 6% life, 10% mana. All around just a very powerful node. Something that I've got it allocated twice on my character in the Delirium League because there's so much Chaos damage, but for someone with Divine Flesh it's even more important. So I started doing a search and I looked for Megalomaniac Jewels that had both Primordial Blonde and Blessed. And going through, what did I find? I started having that's the fire one there. I started having a look through and I found that there were 9 results that came up. And looking through them, so this one had one with a shield, which was a defensive node that requires using a shield. I wasn't sure this player was using a shield, so I didn't go with that one. You'll notice that I've turned online only off, so I'm looking at both online and offline players. This one had pressure points. I didn't actually look up what pressure points did, but I believed that it was a physical damage one, so I didn't go with it. Sap Psyche, again, I didn't look into it. Flow of Life, I knew, was a low-quality life node. And so I decided that this would be what I would probably recommend to this player to pick up as a Megalomaniac. So they're getting Blessed, which is an extraordinarily good hybrid life and chaos resistance node. Something that is very, very powerful. They're going to get a huge benefit from. Primordial Bond will be a significant offensive bonus. And Flow of Life, whilst it's got a wasted state on it, so Flow of Life, if you're not familiar with it, gives you damage over time multiplier. It gives you 4% life and 0.6% life regen. So 4% life is good, 0.6% life regen is serviceable, and the damage over time multiplier is a dump stat, but is still not complete and utter trash. You'll notice that at 3 Exalted Orbs, this is not a trivial price, but it's also not super expensive either. And lots of people can find a Megalomaniac that will fit their build at that sort of price. The second build that I wanted to search for was a Trickster Ignite Fireball. So the first search that I did was actually not the best one. Here I looked for Burning Bright, which is a medium quality node that adds fire damage. So if we bring up here, you can see Burning Bright adds 8% fire damage over time multiplier, 20% increased fire damage, and 8% increased area of effect. All of those stats are useful for Fireball, fire damage over time multiplier being extraordinarily useful. And so I thought that this was going to be a nice starting point for a Fireball build. And then I did the same, I continued the search, but this time I was using Blessed again. I did consider some of the other high quality defensive nodes as well. I considered, for instance, using Fettle as something to search for. But for the first one, I did a search for Blessed. So I'm looking for 2 specific things, Burning Bright plus Blessed. And what did I end up finding in there? The best one that I was able to find this way was Agent of Destruction as the 3rd node. So if we bring up Agent of Destruction here, it's 25% increased elemental damage while affected by a Herald, and 10% chance to freeze, shock, and ignite while affected by a Herald. That's serviceable. It's not particularly great, so I thought, okay, let's go back to the drawing boards. I started out looking for Burning Bright specifically, and I started out looking for Blessed specifically. But let's go greedier. Instead of going with what I feel is the second or third best offensive node in Burning Bright, why don't we go for the best one? Why don't we look for Blowback? And instead of going for Blessed, which is probably the second best defensive node for a life build, why don't we go for the best one, Fettle? And this time, I had to look down to see what I was able to find. Blowback, Fettle, and Wheel Shaper. Wheel Shaper is one that I'll bring up. PoE Wheel Shaper. You'll find that you'll be able to search a lot of these pretty quickly if you type PoE in there, because no one knows all the new notables yet. 5% of extra maximum mana as extra maximum energy shield. This is a really powerful node. Unfortunately, it doesn't synergize well at all with Fettle for most builds. For that reason, I chose not to go with it, and I chose to keep looking. And again, it's just a case of scrolling down. Empowered Envoy. That is the one that makes your heralds increase the power of your minions. Dark Messenger. And after scouring down for a little way, the best third option I was able to find was unfortunately one that wasn't priced, and that was Mindfulness down the bottom. So what Mindfulness gives you is a huge boost to mana. It's both a permanent mana boost and an increase to mana regeneration while stationary. You have a lot of troubles on Ignite Fireball builds with mana generally, so this is something that can be potentially very, 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 very good. And so that was the thought that I had in mind as to what I would try to seek out if I was looking for a Megalomaniac on a Trickster Fireball Ignite build, like the build I played in Blight League. The third one that I want to talk about is Custom Critical Strike Ice Nova Assassin. This is what I'm playing in the current league, and I've actually picked up 2 Megalomaniacs, one of which I'm using and one of which I intend to use as soon as I can shuffle a few things around on my passive tree. So this is a build that uses critical strikes and that uses Herald of Ice to considerable effect. So I've picked up Self-Fulfilling Prophecy, which grants 1% base critical strike to all of your Herald skills, and also gives you additional critical strike multiplier after you have had a critical strike inflicted by a Herald skill in the last 4 seconds. I also found that in conjunction with Blessed and Blast Freeze. This is something I felt I got quite lucky on. I think I picked it up for 100 Chaos Orbs fairly early in the league, and I feel like I got a bit of a steal there, but I was one of the only people looking for Megalomaniacs at the time. I then picked up a second one, which also had Self-Fulfilling Prophecy on it, and also had Enduring Composure, which is my favourite defensive node from the Cluster Jewel system. And it's something that's only normally available on small Cluster Jewels that are armor focused, which aren't very popular to use, and that's why it's so powerful. And it gives you the Juggernaut defensive bonus of each time that you gain 1 endurance charge each second if you have been hit recently. So Enduring Composure is an extremely powerful defensive node. So in summary, what I suggest you do is you pick out one node that your build can use that is offensive and that is very powerful, but that also isn't something everyone else is looking to use. So you're not looking for Purposeful Harbinger here. You're not looking for something that's build enabling like that. You're just looking for something that is a high quality node on your build, but that most builds get nothing out of. Self-Fulfilling Prophecy is the example I'm using myself on my Custom Critical Strike Ice Nova Assassin. You want to start with that. Then you want to look through all the available defensive nodes and pick out what you feel are the best 3 for your build. And then run searches. So jump into the Path of Exile trade site and run searches. So start by going clear everything, Megalomaniac, medium cluster jewel, and then in show filters add, in stat filters, what you want to do is say, let's say adding Enduring Composure. One passive skill is Enduring Composure, and then add another filter, and this filter will be one passive skill is Self-Fulfilling Prophecy. This is my starting point. There's only 10 with these two, and that's because Enduring Composure is quite a rare node. And now we're going to have a look. What do we got here? Wasting Affliction PoE. Google knows me too well. This one here, increased damage with ailments. Damaging ailments deal damage 10% faster. This would be great if I was setting enemies on fire. I'm not setting them on fire, I'm freezing them. That does nothing for me at all. I wouldn't take it. Cure Might, I think, is actually a very good one. But I need to check that because I'm not certain of that, because no one knows all of these. And I was wrong. 20 strength, Purity of Fire, reduced reservation, which is a really strong stat but doesn't fit my build because I've got no intention of using purities. So okay, that isn't actually all that useful. I mean, 20 strength is okay, but I walk past 30 strength nodes on the tree anyway, so I'm not that fussed about getting it. So Shifting Shadow. This is just pure dexterity for me. Hitting blinding enemies on hit is okay, but it's not great. Veteran Defender. And again, we're just keeping on searching for things here that are good. 15 to all attributes. Increased defenses from equipped shield. I'm using an energy shield, and 15% elemental resistances while holding a shield. This is not the best node possible for me, but this is a strong node. This is a really, really good node. And so based on that, I'd be inclined to contact this player, Nino Oop, and ask them if I can find a time that we can meet up and I can transact and pick this up off them. Because this is doing everything that my build wants. Enduring Composure is great defensively, Self-Fulfilling Prophecy is solid for map clear, extraordinary for map clear, and Veteran Defender just solves problems. Getting your resistances on the tree isn't necessarily the place that you first think of for getting them, but you've got to get them somewhere. And that's fundamentally the key that I suggest you do in trade leagues for using Megalomaniacs. You want to do a search where you find the niche, node that no one else wants, that your build can use. Then you want to find a very powerful defensive node, and then just look for something that has a third node down the list. Not necessarily one you think is great, but one that you think is good enough to use. Once you've done that, you've got yourself a Megalomaniac that is worth actually that's worth trading for, and that can serve you very well. Of course, there is an opportunity cost to using a Megalomaniac. You could instead use a traditional medium cluster jewel attached and have in its jewel socket, you could have a small cluster jewel. So you need to weigh up the pros and the cons here. For some players, you'll find Megalomaniac will be better. For others, it's better to go the traditional route. And I like it when this is a real decision for endgame, for endgame chase items like Megalomaniac. When it's a real decision, there's a high opportunity cost to using it, but the payoff is certainly there. If you've got any comments or questions, fire away below. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have a good one.